And the U.S. economy looks to be on the rebound after a better-than-expected May jobs report on Friday. The Dow Industrials jumping some 800 points on Friday. Joining me right now to assess where we are is the White House trade advisor, Peter Navarro. Peter, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Beautiful day here in Washington.
We were all expecting another decline in jobs, loss in jobs in the month of May. In fact, we had 2.5 million jobs created. Has the recovery began, Peter?
I think as a macroeconomist, what I love to do is look at boots on the ground. And what I saw on Friday in the great state of Maine was a recovery in full swing, at least away from our urban areas, because there's really a tale of two cities going on here. What I saw, we went up on Air Force One to a place called Guilford, Maine, where there's a company called Puritan. It's doing just an absolutely beautiful job for this country. With the help of the Defense Production Act, President Trump, that company's gearing up to produce what's going to be 60 million swabs a month, every 6 months, enough swabs for the entire population of the American people. And what was beautiful about that was also the fact that in order to ramp up a factory in 60 days instead of a year, that's Trump time, they also recruited General Dynamics. Phoebe Novakovic, the head of that, one of the best CEOs in this country, has been able to repurpose factories. So what they did was they made the machines that help Puritan package the swabs. So you saw jobs created from Bangor to Guilford to Pittsfield, all the way over to the Bath Iron Works and Brunswick. And at the same time, Maria, we met with a group of commercial fishermen. President Trump signed an executive order. This is one of two over the last 2 weeks that have done more for commercial fishermen in the last 50 years than any president has done. And what the president did that day was liberate 5,000 square miles of fertile fishing area outside the Georges Bank for commercial fishermen. So I saw nothing but beautiful jobs created coming in from the high school where we landed in the Nighthawks to the facility at Puritan. Half a mile was just ringed with people cheering the president on. This is what happens when you get away from our major metropolitan areas into the rest of the country. It was a beautiful thing to watch. So all the way up and down from Bar Harbor to Kennebunkport, Bangor, Bath, everywhere in between, the great state of Maine is working. And that's the kind of thing I'm seeing with this president. That's what he cares about, creating jobs.
So you're back in Washington right now. Washington, D.C. was the last city to reopen. Where you're standing right now, Peter, are there protesters, peaceful protesters around you? Can you tell us what it looks like there? Because you're talking about a tale of two cities. We're going to show the pictures of Washington versus where you were in Maine. What does it feel like right now where you are?
This morning, it's a very peaceful Sunday morning. Yesterday, going to and from work, what I saw is many peaceful protesters, but there were a lot of bad hombres out there as well, ready to riot. And here's what my concern is in this kind of tale of two cities. Where we had Guilford, Maine prospering. D.C. right now is a burnout shell, and the second worst mayor in America, Muriel Bowser, is largely responsible for that. She waited until all 50 states to reopen this place, and it's not open now. What it is basically is graffiti. It's boarded up places. And let me do a little math for you, a little arson and looter math for you. When you have an arsonist burn out a small business, that's 100 jobs that are destroyed, not just inside the enterprise, but along the supply chain. When you have a pack of animals go in and loot a big store, that's thousands of jobs. And if you add that up, Maria, in the math, over the 16 major metropolitan areas where the National Guard has had to be deployed, that's almost 2 million jobs that are being impacted at a time when China has put 40 million Americans out of work and killed 100,000 Americans. And so the point, I think, here is that this is a time to be opening our businesses, not bringing them down, not turning our major metropolitan areas into theme parks for arsonists and looters. And I blame China for a lot of this because if you think about what happened in the 2000s, Maria, China, with its unfair trade practices, destroyed factory towns one after one throughout the Midwest. What China's virus is doing, and they unleashed this on the world, and your show has been one of the few brave enough to cover that story. What they've done is target, like intercontinental ballistic missiles, the two pillars of American cities.
Yeah.
That's the high-rise density and the mass transit. Without those two things, our cities don't work. So this president built this economy up in 3.5 years, the most beautiful economy in history. We can do it again, but we're going to need our major metropolitan areas to get back to work.
Right.
And when I look around at this city with Muriel Bowser, it's not happening anytime soon.
And you write that today in an op-ed on FoxNews.com talking about China and its culpability. China has exploited the coronavirus pandemic to advance its strategic interests. And you write throughout, look, we have seen a real impact from all of this this year. And of course, you just said even the protests are worsening it, 2 million jobs affected. So I guess we have to get the manufacturing base fired up in this country. It's been the services part of this economy that's gotten crushed by this shutdown. Are you going to be able to move the needle? You've been on with me before talking about how dangerous it is that even the government buys way too much in terms of our pharmaceuticals and our medical equipment from China.
Well, let's be clear what the Chinese Communist Party is doing right now. Behind this crisis that they foisted on the world, they're sinking ships in the South China Sea. They're invading India. They're trying to steal our vaccines. And I know I'm going to be criticized for what I'm about to say right now, but I would like to see at least one sign out there that says China lied, Americans died. Because the bigger context here, as we struggle to get back to full economic strength, is that China has a plan to take us over and take the world over. That's not hyperbole. All you need to do is look at what they're doing, what the reaction is. Let's remember what they did. They spawned that virus. They hid the virus. They sent it on airplanes around the world to seed America and the rest of the world. And now we've got 100,000 Americans dead, and we got 40 million Americans on the unemployment line, trillions of dollars of economic wealth destroyed. And Maria, your show does such a good job highlighting this, but I'll bet you a lot of money that none of the other Sunday shows today are even going to mention the word China, when in fact, this is something that we as a nation have to grapple with. This is something that this president right over there has done in terms of standing up to China, the first president in ever to do that.
And in terms of your work on the fishermen, there will be new tariffs on lobsters. What specifically are you working on? I know the president called you the lobster king. Real quick, Peter, we got to jump.
What we need to do is stop these Europe and China from punishing our lobster fishermen with high, unfair tariffs to manipulate our political system. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to address in the coming days.
All right, we'll leave it there. Peter, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much. Peter Navarro joining us this morning at the White House.